Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that changed my whole life. No plan means no progress. You can pray, you can hope, you can wish, you can dream. But if you don't lay down a plan, you're just circling the same mountain over and over again. A lot of people want success, but they don't want to sit down and map out where they're going. See, life is not magic, it's motion. And motion requires direction. If you don't decide where you're going, life will decide for you. And trust me, life won't pick the destination you want. When you move through life without a clear plan, everything becomes a matter of chance. You start relying on luck instead of responsibility, and your days become a series of random actions instead of intentional steps. Without a plan, success becomes something you hope for rather than something you build. People often say they want to change their life, but when you ask them what their actual plan is, they freeze. They can tell you the destination. They want money, they want peace, they want success, they want freedom, but they can't tell you the route. And that's the difference between dreamers and achievers. A dreamer hopes to reach the top of the mountain. An achiever studies it, maps out the journey, prepares for the climb, and starts walking. A plan is what turns a dream into a path, and a path into progress. If you don't plan your time will control you. If you don't plan your future, your circumstances will dictate it. If you don't plan your day, distraction will steal it. Life doesn't reward potential, it rewards preparation. Every person you admire, the athletes, the entrepreneurs, the creators, the leaders, didn't just end up where they are. They planned. They worked backward from where they wanted to be and created steps that led them there. If you look closely, their success wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. They woke up with purpose, not confusion. They didn't spend each day wondering what to do next. They already knew. A plan gives you that clarity. It removes guesswork. When you have a plan, you don't waste your energy deciding what to do. You use your energy doing it. And that's how progress compounds. That's how small actions create big results. Without a plan, you're easily thrown off course. Any problem becomes a crisis. Any delay feels like failure. Any distraction becomes a detour. But with a plan, obstacles don't stop you. They inform you. They help you adjust. They teach you what doesn't work so you can reinforce what does. Planning doesn't guarantee perfection. It guarantees direction. And direction is the fuel of progress. Too many people walk into each day blind, hoping something good will happen. But hope alone is not a strategy. You can hope for a better life, but until you sit down, how you're going to build it, you're just dreaming with your eyes open. A plan forces you to look at your goals realistically. It makes you break them down into pieces your current self can handle. You don't climb the whole staircase at once. You take one step, then another, then another. But without a plan, you don't even know where the staircase is. And days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly a whole year passes, and you're still standing in the same place, wondering why nothing changed. Without a plan, progress isn't just slow, it's unpredictable. Maybe you'll move forward one day, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you won't. But success doesn't come from luck, it comes from intention. A plan also holds you accountable. When you see your goals on paper, when you write down the steps, when you commit to the timeline, you can't lie to yourself. You can't hide behind excuses. You know exactly what needs to be done. And that pressure is healthy. It forces you to grow. It forces you to act. It forces you to become the person your dreams require. Planning is a sign of respect for yourself, for your time, and for your future. When you plan, you're telling life, I'm serious about where I'm going. And life responds to that energy. People who plan make progress even on their worst days, because the plan gives them something to follow when motivation disappears. The plan keeps them steady when emotions get loud. The plan keeps them focused when life gets chaotic. A plan turns discipline into habit and habit into success. Without it, you drift. With it, you rise. A plan doesn't need to be perfect for it to change your life. It just needs to give you direction, structure, and a starting point. Too many people think they must wait until every detail makes sense before they can move. They want every step to be clear, every outcome to be predictable, and every risk to be eliminated before they begin. But life doesn't work like that. Progress happens when you commit to a path, even if that path isn't fully lit. A simple plan, one that tells you what to do today, what to avoid tomorrow, and where you're trying to go, can create more momentum than a complicated plan you never start. A plan gives shape to your ambition. Without it, your goals float around like clouds, beautiful but impossible to hold. With it, they become real, something you can touch, measure, and move toward. When you create a plan, what you're really doing is giving your mind something to focus on. Instead of waking up every day overwhelmed by possibilities, you wake up with direction. You know what matters today and what doesn't. You know what deserves your time and what is simply noise. You stop wasting energy on things that don't move you closer to your purpose. Even a basic plan can save you from months of confusion and years of procrastination. It breaks the big picture into small tasks you can actually complete, and each small task you finish builds confidence, discipline, and momentum. Momentum is powerful. It makes hard things easier. When you check off one step, you feel capable of taking the next. And that single feeling can transform your entire journey. The beauty of an imperfect plan is that it allows you to grow while you move. If your plan was perfect from the start, you wouldn't learn anything along the way. But because it's not perfect, every step teaches you something. You figure out what works, what doesn't, what needs adjusting, and what you should double down on. Progress isn't about always being right. It's about constantly improving. A simple plan gives you enough structure to move forward, and enough flexibility to adapt when life teaches you something new. Without a plan, you react to everything around you. With a plan, you respond with intention. Some people avoid planning because they fear failure. They think that if they write down their goals and don't achieve them exactly, they've lost. But the truth is the opposite. Planning is what protects you from failure. It gives you room to fall, room to adjust, and room to stand back up stronger. When you don't have a plan, failure hits harder because you don't know what to fix. But with a plan, failure becomes feedback. It becomes a lesson. It becomes clarity. You learn where you need to improve. You learn what's missing. You learn what step needs to come next. A plan gives you a way to measure progress, even when the progress is imperfect. Even the act of planning builds commitment. When you write your goals down, when you map out your steps, when you organize your priorities, you're declaring to yourself that your life matters. You're taking responsibility for your growth. You're saying, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm moving. And that shift in mindset alone can change everything. A mind with a plan is dangerous. In the best way, it becomes focused, disciplined, and harder to distract. It refuses to settle for less because it knows exactly what it's working toward. A simple plan also reduces fear. Most fear comes from uncertainty, from not knowing what will happen next. But when you have a plan, even a basic one, you eliminate a lot of that uncertainty. You might not know the outcome, but you know your next step. You know what to do today, and that's enough to keep you moving. Fear loses its power when you can see the path, even if only one step at a time. And once you take that step, the next one becomes clearer. That is how progress works. Step by step, not all at once. At the end of the day, you don't need a flawless roadmap to become successful. You don't need a perfectly drawn blueprint with every detail predicted. You just need a direction, a structure, and the courage to begin. A simple plan can take a complicated dream and turn it into a real, achievable journey. It keeps you grounded, keeps you focused, and keeps you accountable. And most importantly, it gets you moving. Because motion is the birthplace of progress, and a plan, no matter how simple, gives you the courage to take that first step. Progress doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect level of confidence. It comes from moving forward even when you feel scared, confused, or unsure. The biggest mistake people make is believing they need to feel ready before they start. But readiness is a myth. Nobody wakes up one morning magically confident, fully prepared, and certain of every step they're about to take. What actually happens is simple. People start anyway. They step into the unknown, even though their heart is racing. They try something new, even though their hands are shaking. They commit to their dream even when the voice in their head tells them they aren't good enough. And because they move, something begins to shift. Movement creates clarity. Action builds courage. Progress rewards the brave, not the comfortable. Every person who ever achieved something great did it while carrying fear in their pocket. They didn't wait for the fear to disappear. They walked with it. They didn't wait for doubts to vanish. They answered them with action. The truth is, fear never fully goes away when you're growing. If you're scared, it means you're stepping into a bigger version of yourself. If you're nervous, it means you're attempting something meaningful. If you're unsure, it means you care about the outcome. These feelings aren't signs to stop. They're signs you're on the right path. The people who never grow are the ones who let fear freeze them. They wait for the right time, and that time never comes. But the ones who rise are the ones who move anyway. Taking action while feeling uncertain also teaches you who you really are. You discover strengths you didn't know you had. You find solutions you couldn't see from the sidelines. You realize you're capable of more than you believed. Confidence doesn't come before the action. It comes from the action. Every step you take becomes evidence that you can handle the journey. And every piece of evidence builds belief. That belief grows into confidence. And that confidence becomes momentum. But none of it happens until you take that first step. Waiting for clarity is another trap. Many people think, I'll start when I know exactly what to do. But clarity doesn't magically appear before you move. Clarity comes while you move. When you take action, you learn. You identify what works and what doesn't. You see which doors open and which doors stay closed. You learn what skills you need to develop, what habits you must change, and what mindset you must strengthen. Without action, none of these lessons come to you. You stay stuck in imagination, not reality. Action brings understanding. Understanding builds direction. Direction creates progress. Even small steps count. A lot of people think they need to make massive moves to create progress. But the truth is the opposite. Consistent small steps taken during uncertainty become powerful over time. They create momentum that pushes you forward, even on days you feel lost. One small action can inspire another, and that chain reaction becomes the foundation of your success. You don't have to leap across the whole canyon. You just have to take one step toward the edge. When you move, life meets you halfway. Opportunities appear. People show up. Ideas surface. But all of this only happens when you initiate the motion. Another important part of taking action in uncertainty is realizing that failure is not the enemy. It's a teacher. When you move forward before you feel ready, you're going to fall. You're going to get confused. But every mistake brings knowledge. Every fall builds resilience. Every confusion pushes you to seek clarity. Failure only hurts when you stop moving. But when you use it as fuel, it becomes one of your greatest tools. The people who wait until they're ready never experience these lessons. They stay safe, but they stay stuck. The people who act while scared grow faster, learn faster, and succeed faster. Your growth, your future, and your progress depend on your ability to take action, even when you don't have everything figured out. There will never be a moment where everything becomes crystal clear. There will never be a time when all your doubts disappear. But there will always be opportunities waiting for the person who steps forward. The world doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards movement. If you choose to act despite your fears, despite your doubts, despite the uncertainty, you begin a transformation that changes your entire life. You step into a version of yourself that is stronger, braver, and more unstoppable than the one who stood still. Movement is where your power lives. And once you take that first step, the rest of the path begins to reveal itself. Hope and prayer carry tremendous power, but they cannot replace strategy, discipline, and deliberate action. Many people sit with big dreams in their hearts, and they pray for change, pray for success, pray for a breakthrough. And prayer absolutely matters. It strengthens your spirit, sharpens your intention, and connects you to a higher purpose. But prayer is not a substitute for planning. Hope is not a substitute for work. You cannot pray for a harvest if you never plant a seed. You cannot ask for a future you refuse to build. A lot of people confuse faith with passiveness. They think believing is enough, but belief must be paired with movement for anything to manifest. Faith without action becomes frustration. You keep asking, but you're not aligning your behavior with what you're asking for. You're waiting for life to hand you everything when life is actually waiting for you to start creating. When you combine hope with strategy, you activate real transformation. You give your dreams the foundation they need to stand on. Prayers open doors, but discipline walks through them. Hope lifts you, but planning directs you. Dreams inspire you, but daily actions shape you. People constantly say, I'm waiting on God, but sometimes God is waiting on you. Waiting on you to write the plan. Waiting on you to take responsibility. Waiting on you to step into the work. When you pray for strength, opportunities will appear that force you to grow. When you pray for success, challenges show up that prepare you. But if you don't have a plan for how you'll handle those moments, you'll feel overwhelmed instead of empowered. Planning is your way of showing you're serious about the blessing you're asking for. Hope alone can sometimes trick you into feeling like you're making progress when you're actually staying still. You feel uplifted, you feel inspired. You feel motivated, but you haven't moved. Inspiration is not progress. Motivation is not progress. Only action is progress. You can pray for clarity, but you must also organize your thoughts. You can pray for opportunity, but you must prepare your skills. You can pray for abundance, but you must create habits that can hold abundance. If you don't structure your life in a way that supports your goals, then even if blessings show up, you won't be ready for them. Planning is not a lack of faith. It is evidence of faith. It is proof that you believe enough in your destiny to prepare for it. Strategy gives hope something to attach itself to. When you pray for something and then create a plan, you're aligning two forces, the spiritual and the practical. That alignment creates momentum, it creates clarity, it creates direction. Each time you take a step that fits your plan, you're telling life, I'm participating in my blessing. And life responds to that energy. When you set goals and hold yourself accountable to them, your prayers become more focused. You ask for the strength to complete specific tasks, not just vague desires. You stop praying for success in general. You start praying for success with intentionality. And intentionality is what separates people who talk about change from people who create change. Discipline is the bridge between your hope and your accomplishment. You can believe in your dream, but if you don't discipline yourself to show up every day, your dream will stay a wish. Discipline is often uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of progress. You can't rely on motivation alone. Motivation fades. Discipline stays. Discipline keeps you moving when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you've lost excitement. It helps you push through the days when hope feels distant. When you're disciplined, you don't need to feel inspired to act. You act because you're committed. Some people think having a plan restricts them, but the truth is the opposite. A plan frees you. It frees your mind from uncertainty. It frees your emotions from confusion. It frees your life from chaos. It gives structure to your efforts and meaning to your sacrifices. When you combine hope with planning and discipline, you move from wishing to becoming. You stop begging for a different life and start building it with your own hands. Little by little, you become the person who can carry the weight of the blessings you've been praying for. Hope lights the spark. Prayer strengthens your heart. But planning and discipline keep the fire alive. When all four work together, nothing in your life stays the same. You stop waiting for miracles and start becoming the miracle. You stop hoping for change and start creating change. And that is when progress becomes inevitable. Breaking your goals into small, daily actions is one of the most powerful ways to build real, lasting momentum. Most people get overwhelmed not because their dream is too big, but because they are trying to attack it all at once. They look at the finished picture and panic about how far they are from it. They tell themselves the journey is too long, the work is too much, and the mountain is too high. But that's only because they're staring at the entire mountain instead of the next step. When you break your goals into manageable pieces, everything becomes lighter, clearer, and more achievable. You start feeling intimidated by the distance and start feeling empowered by the progress you can make today. Small steps create a sense of movement, and movement fuels motivation. Even if the step seems tiny, it still counts. Reading 1 page a day, saving a small amount of money, exercising for a few minutes, practicing a skill for 15 minutes. These actions may not seem life-changing in the moment, but repeated consistently, they transform everything. Success is rarely the result of a dramatic leap. It's usually the result of quiet persistence. People often underestimate what they can accomplish through daily discipline because the results aren't immediate. But the truth is, daily repetition builds habits, and habits build identity. As you complete these small actions each day, you begin to see yourself differently. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to believe that progress is possible because you're watching yourself create it. Another reason breaking tasks into small actions works so effectively is because it reduces the emotional resistance that stops people from starting. When a task feels too big, your mind invents excuses. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You tell yourself you're too busy today. You tell yourself you don't know where to begin. But when the task is small, your mind can't argue. It has no reason to resist. When your goal for the day is clear and manageable, you feel less fear, less procrastination. That small action becomes something you can complete quickly and feel proud of, and that pride becomes fuel. Small steps also give you control. When you focus only on the big outcome, you feel helpless because the result seems so far away. But daily actions are within your control. They give you something to hold on to. Even when life becomes chaotic, even when emotions run high, even when motivation disappears, you still know exactly what you have to do today. You're no longer depending on perfect circumstances. You're depending on your consistency. And consistency is something you can control. One of the most powerful benefits of breaking goals into small actions is that it builds momentum. Momentum is the invisible force that makes hard things feel easier. Once you start staying consistent, it becomes more natural. What used to feel overwhelming becomes routine. What used to scare you becomes familiar. What used to feel impossible becomes expected. Momentum is built like a snowball, small at first, but as it rolls, it gathers more strength, more speed, and more impact. But the snowball only grows if you start rolling it. Small, daily actions are what push it forward. These small steps also reveal your weaknesses and strengths. When you take consistent action, you notice what slows you down, what distracts you, and what motivates you. You learn which habits need to be replaced, which routines need adjusting, and which behaviors are helping you move faster. You can't discover these things when you're stuck in planning mode or waiting for inspiration. Action teaches you what planning can't. And because the steps are small, adjustments become easy instead of overwhelming. Breaking goals into daily actions also protects you from burnout. If your goals require massive effort every day, you'll quit. You'll drain your energy and lose your motivation. But small steps are sustainable. They allow you to grow at a pace that doesn't break you. They allow you to build the life you want without sacrificing your mental, emotional, or physical well-being. Small steps respect your humanity while still moving you toward excellence. With every small action, you stack victories. Those victories build confidence. Confidence builds resilience. Resilience builds consistency. And consistency builds the life you want. Every day you complete a small step. You're not just making progress, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of achieving the larger vision. And that belief alone can change everything. When you create a plan, everything in your life begins to shift, but the shift becomes even more powerful when you truly commit to it. Once you get clear about what you want and disciplined about how you're going to reach it, life starts aligning in ways you never expected. Your mind becomes sharper, your focus becomes stronger, and the noise around you becomes easier to ignore. Clarity is like turning on a light in a dark room. You finally see what was right in front of you all along. You start realizing that opportunities were never the problem, lack of direction was. Once you decide exactly what you're chasing, the world stops looking like a big pile of confusion and starts looking like a path with signs, patterns, and doors that were always meant for you. When you commit to a plan, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop letting life happen to you and start creating the life you want. Most people drift through their days doing whatever feels urgent instead of doing what actually matters. But when you're clear on your goals, you stop wasting time on things that don't add value. You stop entertaining distractions, gossip, negativity, and pointless habits. Clarity gives you boundaries. It teaches you what deserves your yes and what needs your no. And discipline keeps those boundaries strong. When you have both clarity and discipline, you become unstoppable because you're no longer moving randomly. You're moving with purpose. As you stick to your plan, you'll start noticing something incredible. People, resources, and opportunities begin showing up at the right time. This isn't magic, it's alignment. When your actions match your goals, life responds differently. You meet people who think like you, who support your growth, who push you forward instead of holding you back. You attract environments that match your vision. You stumble into chances that feel too perfectly timed to be accidents. But none of this happens for the person who waits. It happens for the person who moves, who plans, who commits. When you align your behavior with your desires, your life aligns itself with your potential. One of the biggest changes that comes from having a plan is internal. You start trusting yourself. Confidence is not built by hype or motivation. It's built by keeping promises to yourself. When you say you're going to do something and then you actually do it, your self-belief grows stronger. Each completed step becomes a reason to believe in your own ability. You don't wait for someone else to validate you because your progress becomes evidence. You start thinking, if I could do yesterday's step, I can handle today's. That belief becomes your fuel. And that fuel is what separates progress from stagnation. Having a plan also quiets the mental chaos that keeps so many people stuck. Uncertainty creates anxiety, but direction creates peace. When you know where you're going, your mind stops racing. You no longer panic about the future because you're building it. You no longer feel lost because you've drawn the map, even when life throws challenges your way. And it will. You handle them differently. A challenge doesn't knock you off track the way it does when you're wandering aimlessly. With a plan, you adjust, adapt, and keep moving. You're too focused to fall apart over temporary setbacks. The beautiful thing is that clarity and discipline turn progress into a habit. At first, it takes effort. You have to push yourself. You have to fight the old patterns. But once you create momentum, progress becomes natural. It becomes something you expect, something you protect, something you build into your everyday life. A person with a plan becomes a person with a future. And that future grows clearer with every step. When you finally decide who you want to become and you commit to the plan that leads you there, nothing can stop the transformation that follows.